Welcome to the Palais Brongniart for this digital session Choose France for Fintech, live from the former stock exchange of Paris. Originally built for Napoleon Bonaparte, the Palace has been the lung of the 19th century financial activity, promoting the expansion of railways and major industrial adventures, and so on until the digitalization of the stock exchange activities 40 years ago. But now, the monument has remained an active place in innovation and a symbol of modern finance, and therefore is now hosting startup villages, green fintech organization, and a fintech hub. What can you tell us about 2020 trends in finance and fintechs?
Look, to talk about 2020, I think we will try to put it into three big blocks. Money, which is the blood of the business, collaboration, which is the way forward, and then we will look also at the big tech. And clearly, 2020, we got all scared at the beginning of 2020. Things were not happening, everything got stopped, but it reactivated. And clearly 2020 will be a good year when it comes to investment, being on a global basis and being also in France. If we look at the numbers, we finished 2019 with 42 billion investment on a global basis, and we will finish 2020, we estimate, at 30. Yes, less, but having said that, it remains a solid numbers. When we bring the data to France, we did more than 850 million in 2019, and we will be there by end of 2020. So business is happening. What is very interesting also is when we look at the investment, the ticket size is growing, and clearly it shows a maturity.
The governor will discuss a very interesting metaphor named the pig, the frog, and the elephant towards a better regulation of digital innovation.
Last year, Ravi Menon came to the Banque de France physically and gave a remarkable speech. Can the three musketeers click? Finance, technology, trust. Earlier this year, the Banque de France opened a new office in Singapore, one of the epicenters of the fintech industry. What better forum than this Singapore Fintech Festival to deliver a speech on financial innovation? And what better way than this partner event in Paris to illustrate the excellent relations between France and Singapore. It says that the formation of Pulau Ubin was due to a frog, a pig, and an elephant. They illustrate three key elements of digital regulations that are crucial to promoting a better ecosystem at the international level. I will start with the pig. It is a symbol of good luck and prosperity, a shield against bad fortune. And this leads us to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a sine qua non for a reliable and sustainable digital future. In order to address the remaining fragmentation, it is essential to structure the international governance on cyber issues. It could be partly inspired on what has been done in the area of money laundering with the FATF. Let me now move to the elephant. It has another useful talent, memory. This brings us to the issue of data protection. Financial supervisors and authorities in charge of privacy have to invent new ways of cooperation to address data issues and their interaction with financial services. We can all notice that there is a striking discrepancy between financial services being borderless and privacy regulations elaborated mostly at the country or regional level, reflecting differing social norms. Furthermore, technology disrupts users and pushes regulation to evolve, both in the financial and the privacy fields. Europe has harmonized its data privacy legislation, and the GDPR is becoming an international standard. We now need to extend cooperation further with our partners, and not only cross-border cooperation, but also cross-disciplinary cooperation. The pig, the elephant, and finally, the frog. As you know, it is a strong symbol of agility and transformation, from tadpole to frog. This is exactly what financial institutions and firms need to respect competition and antitrust rules. We also need to make sure that similar activities and risks are addressed in the same way, regardless of the type of institutions involved. Situations where the winner takes most while staying outside of the financial regulated scope should be adequately anticipated and avoided. We have to collaborate more closely at the international level in order to adopt the most comprehensive approach across borders and regulatory scopes. Let me now come to a second point. I wish to say a few words on payments, because they are currently at the heart of digital innovation. In the last few months, Europe, for example, has made decisive progress in designing a holistic payment strategy, thanks to the commitment of the Commission and of our Eurosystem. Let me conclude with a few words about green finance. In France and in Europe, we are aiming to put green finance at the forefront of our shared efforts. And I welcome the strong involvement of Asian central banks and supervisors within the NGFS. Starting with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we can collectively be proud of the work achieved.
Now I would like to introduce Cedric, the Minister of Digital Transformation, to talk about the French tech ecosystem and the supportive public policies.
Well, as you know, France has always been supporting its startup ecosystem. And we've had two times during the pandemics. The first one is we tried to absorb the impact of the crisis, because to some extent we were forced to go into lockdown overnight. So it was a huge difficulty for the economy, especially for the startups. So we tried to help them in terms of cash, in terms of handling unemployment problems, and so on and so on. And then, as many other countries, there is a question on how to leverage on the crisis and to build the future of the ecosystems, of the tech ecosystems. So, as many other countries, but especially, but maybe with a specific focus on tech in France, when we designed our stimulus package in order to recover from the crisis, we decided that, to some extent, tech would be very important within that stimulus package, both from an overall point of view, bringing more fuel within the ecosystem, but also from a vertical point of view. What we've seen in the past is that the big techs, for instance, have built their power on the consequences of the last crisis in 2008. And so we decided that France would invest, for instance, in quantum computing, in AI, in cybersecurity, in biotech, and so on, in order to build the French economy of the future. And obviously, the French tech ecosystem is a key pillar of that.
But as the fintech ecosystem goes stronger, can you tell us about the dynamisms in the tech ecosystem itself, how it's structured with the French tech and the fundraising and its resilience?
Yeah, since the beginning, President Macron has been laying a great emphasis into developing the French tech, the French startup ecosystem. And so that's one of the reasons why we undertook a lot of reforms at the beginning of the mandate. I'm thinking of labor market reforms, of reform on taxation, on capital gains, on vocational training, and so on and so on. And we are gaining a lot of success.
And how do you see the recovery or the acceleration in the tech sector in France?
I would not speak about a recovery. I think that this is a quicker expansion of the ecosystem. And I think that the French startups will raise more money in 2020 than they did in 2019. We are accelerating, and as Winston Churchill himself said it, we are not wasting the crisis. Legacy businesses, such as small shops and so on, are forced to digitalize due to the confinement period. So what's interesting is that digitalization is gaining pace, obviously in the startup, in in the pure players, but this is all the more true in the legacy economy. The fintech ecosystem is developing at the same pace than the rest of the ecosystem, which means quite fast. If you want to develop a fintech ecosystem, you should rely on a conversation between the regulator, the state, and the entrepreneurs, because trust is key in that ecosystem. And I remember that I had 2 months ago a dinner with François, Villeroy, the regulator, and a few entrepreneurs in order to discuss how we can design regulation to preserve the reputation of the French place, but also help steer up innovation. And I think that we can rely on a financial place that is quite well known all over the world in France, and we have to transform that reputation, to transform our know-how into innovation.
I think we can agree today that international development is a key driver. So is it the reason why La French Tech is so interested to develop important and consistent relationship with Asia and even more with Singapore?
And we all know that if you want to build something big, you have to rely on something international. So that's why the way we are building it is we want all the best entrepreneurs, the best researchers, and the best companies to come here. And we know that we have to do it in cooperation with a lot of countries, and especially countries such as Singapore. We all see that there are 2 major players as far as tech is concerned, which are China and the US, and the other countries are struggling in order to develop their own ecosystem. So we share common interest with Singapore, and I had a very interesting discussion with Mr. Ambassador and also the Minister S. Iswaran a few days ago. I think that we have to build bridges between culture and between continents, especially Asia, which is to some extent leading the way in terms of innovation, in order to strengthen our 2 ecosystems.
And where do you think will be the priorities in the newly collaboration?
The financial sector is obviously interesting, considering the weight of the 2 financial places that are Singapore and Paris. There are also areas that we discussed a few days ago, for instance, which is the way to handle the pandemics with technology. I mean, we all know that technology is developing. We all know that we have to invest in technology and go faster. But there are also questions among the population about the impact of technology in our day-to-day life. And there is, to some extent, a doubt on technology. So we have to ensure our people that technology is built and is developed on top of the core values that we've all been sharing over the past centuries. And this is something that democracies such as Singapore and France, but also other countries such as Canada or the European Union, obviously, can work together on. Because there is an American model, there is a Chinese model, and we think that there could be a third way that we could build with, to some extent, non-aligned states. And we want to build the next stage of that history in France, investing in startups, investing in technology, investing in entrepreneurs. And we want to do it from an international point of view. So I would be really happy first to come to Singapore in the coming months, if the pandemic allows me to do so, but also to welcome all the Singaporean entrepreneurs and investors so that we can build bridges between the 2 countries.
Arnaud de Bresson, I would like to start with you because you're managing Paris EUROPLACE, which is an organization in charge of developing and promoting the Paris financial marketplace and the French financial industry internationally. So what, in the long-term strategy in fintech and in green finance, green and sustainable finance, more precisely for Paris financial ecosystem to become the financial center of future Europe?
We are today in a very new context. First, because of the COVID crisis, but also with what is happening on European level. And I mentioned the Brexit, but in fact, which gives new opportunities in the short term to Paris to grow. And I quote a British agency, New Financial, which was giving some new data a few days ago. As from now, Paris is the leading financial center in the EU 27 with 24% of market share, ahead of Germany with 20%. Paris is an international leader in green finance, in green bonds issuings, as well as the development of new investment initiatives, and BPI is contributing.
Can you tell us about the financial instruments for startup and fintech supported by BPI France? First, to become the future financial center in Europe, but more precisely this year, to survive the pandemic?
I think regarding startups and fintech startups specifically, the point was not surviving the pandemic. The point was thriving on the pandemic. Because basically, if you look at the startup ecosystem for most companies, they have been doing very well, and the crisis has operated as an acceleration, not as a major difficulty for most digital startups. So we had to do both, helping them to grow in a very difficult context and make sure that no one is left apart on the side of the road, if I may say. Regarding BPI France, we have always been operating, as you mentioned, some sort of a one-stop shop for startups. So we extend a lot of grants and subsidies on the basis of 1 to 2 billion per year to the French startups. We have specific loan schemes, we have investment schemes, and we also operate as one of the key limited partners for the French venture funds. In 3 months, we had to extend around 120 billion euros of loans to 650,000 companies over 3 months of time. This is not what we are dimensioned to do on a regular basis. To give you an idea, on a regular basis, we extend around 80,000 guarantees per year. So we had to do 10 times more in 4 times less of time. So to do this, we chose to partner with a lot of French startups. Some of them we knew before, some of them we didn't know before, but one very important part is that we had started this strategy of open banking and fintech partnerships many years before, and that allowed us to accelerate and to be operational, if you will. So to be live at scale based on a partnership with around 20 startups within 15 days.
If we talk about the helping the fintech to go abroad, can we talk about the French delegation you've set up for the Singapore Fintech Festival, I think 2019 and this year again?
First, it's part of our strategy and part of what we do to accompany the best French startups in the more interesting places abroad. And clearly, accompanying fintechs in Singapore is one of the key points for us in this part of the economy for many reasons. We've been doing so last year, and I can tell you we'll be doing so next year too. And always very happy to see that we can find great companies that are really interested in learning about these markets, gaining market shares, finding customers in Singapore and in Southeast Asia. The reason why it's very interesting, I think Singapore has this very specific blend of very good technology, great financial environment, and at the same time a huge potential of development, which is very specific. Last thing is the regulatory environment in Singapore. It's been mentioned a lot, but obviously the MAS is doing a great job.
Last year's delegation was, there was success stories.
Yeah, definitely. If we want to be specific, ICA, which is doing, let's say, intensive calculation for risk management, now has an office in Singapore. Kaiko, which is specialized in data for crypto assets, has very interesting too, more customers in Singapore and Asia than it has in France, coming from nowhere 1 year ago in terms of customers in Asia. So out of a delegation of 5 companies, 2 are now very operationally active in Asia and in Singapore.
Well, talking about digital assets, the French Central Bank, European Central Bank are talking a lot about central bank digital currency, and also the governor addressed this topic earlier. What do you think about this? Is it time for international cooperation? Yeah,
obviously it is. It's it's the most thrilling issue in the fintech area, I think, is about crypto assets, because it's one of these unique moments when you see that there is a real potential for disruption, a real technological innovation, which is massive, which is really a new framework that can, in the next 10 years, really set up a revolution in the financial system. So at the same time, we need deep technological skills and being very experimental at a small scale. And we need a deep regulatory view because we are playing with the whole financial system. So at the same time, we need startups with very high-end engineers, and we need regulators working about financial schemes. So we need to find this right mix. It's about being international, because a lot of use cases are about international commerce, as was mentioned by the governor of the Banque de France. So we need those three elements: startups with very high-end engineering, national regulators, and international collaboration. And this we can find in France for sure, and because we have a strong culture of public-private collaboration. And this we can also find in Singapore, where the MAS has been very active. And we are very happy to see that there is a stronger and stronger collaboration between Banque de France and MAS, with Banque de France now being settled in Singapore. And it's a very promising collaboration on this field specifically.